Energylandia is home to a lot of rides, and I mean a lot of rides. And while roller coasters like Zadra and Hyperion get all the talk, rightfully so, one that sometimes gets left out is the Vekoma multi-launch coaster located all the way in the back of the park. It's Abyssus. And this is actually a really fun ride. It's definitely that number 3 attraction at Energylandia. It's one of the many Vekomas in this park. It opened in the summer of 2021, and it's what they call their shockwave model. There's actually another one of these in China called Dragon in the Jungle. It's not quite as long. Some of the stuff in the beginning was taken out. This is a layout that features 2 launches, 4 inversions, max speed 62 miles per hour, and it's in the Aqualantis section of the park. And I really appreciate this attraction's presentation. Like when you're walking up to this ride, everything just ties together in the theme of the area. This coaster has a beautiful color scheme, and it's just visually stunning to look at. And actually, this was a pretty highly anticipated ride for me. I remember following along with the construction. I could not wait to experience this thing, especially as an American. These next-gen Vekomas were just so intriguing to me. And the day before, we had just done Lek Coaster at Legendia. So I had high hopes for this, and I gotta say, I was a little disappointed. Maybe if I had done Lek Coaster afterwards, then I wouldn't have been. But the roller coaster is a whole lot of elements. I mean, it's a very long ride, but I would just say that the coaster lacks that punchiness that I was hoping for. But I'm going to break down each of these different moments, talk about its strong suits, what I think could have been better, and then of course I'll give it an overall score at the end. Now, as I mentioned, I really like what they did with the look of this attraction, especially the entrance. Right there with the sign, you actually walk in between the Batwing. So when you look to your left and right, you see the coaster just flipping upside down there. To your right is a diving show. Directly ahead of you is a bunch of these really tall columns. And I guess the whole idea is that you're flying over water. Unfortunately, though, I feel like they definitely could have done better with that, because one thing that Abyssus does incorporate is trenches. Throughout this entire roller coaster, in so many spots when you hit a valley, you drop down a bit lower than what you'd expect, and it gives the feeling of tunnels. It's like not quite there. I mean, the area where this ride is located in is very much flat ground, so they didn't exactly have terrain to work with, so they kind of made their own. But something I expected in an area called Aqualantis is water. I was really hoping that there was going to be some really cool moments where the roller coaster is actually over water, and it's not. I don't know if that's a dumb complaint, but I really feel like that was something that was lacking from this attraction. In my opinion, this was a, oh, you're almost there, you're so close, and then you just didn't quite hit the mark. And I hate to even say this, but probably the best word I would use to describe this is unfinished. The ride's been open for well over a year now, and they got so much of the theme right. Like, the entrance just looks amazing, but then you look at some areas like this, you just see like pieces of steel just hanging out in sections where it looks like there should be more theming. Some arches, some columns, anything. I don't know if it's because they ran out of budget for theming, ran out of time, and decided to leave it, but it's almost kind of bare. And I think that same feeling of almost there but not quite hitting it continues in the ride experience. Like literally, like as you leave the station, you depart and you come to a stop and you sit there for a second. This would have been a great moment to incorporate some sort of effect, like sound, mist, anything really. We even see that on Formula in the same park. But in terms of the actual ride experience, I like to break Abyssus up into the first half and the second half, separating them by the second launch. So the first half of this is very graceful and tame. The airtime hills will still send you up out of your seat, but not a ton. I felt like the ride would have been just as strong without the first half. The reason why I think it's there is because then it probably would have been too similar to Formula. They wanted that multi-launch. And so this first half is very much the warm-up for the second half, which is where it's going to shine. So as you take some of these turns and transitions, you're just kind of gliding through them, not much force at all. And then you hit your second launch. And this second launch is fun. It boosts you up to what I assume is the top speed here and enter your tallest moment, which is your top hat at 126 feet tall. And this is actually a pretty steep drop up ahead. I do think the roller coaster would have been better if it didn't trim you right there at the first drop. You have all the speed rising up over, and I think that in the back you totally would have gotten whipped over. I'm not quite sure what went into the decision of adding that trim. Maybe it's because of the forces that you would pull at the bottom. I mean, I think there's more than one moment on the second half of this roller coaster where you can gray out. I would say the main gray out for me was after that loop that immediately follows the drop. You bank low to the ground, exiting that inversion, and then fly into an airtime hill. Right there in that valley, I definitely went gray. So maybe they're worried that there'd be too much force in that region, which is why they put the trim there. That's just my guess. But also, as an enthusiast, I think the drop personally would have been better without it. Even all that being said, believe it or not, I do prefer the front row on Abyssus over the back row. So if you only get one ride on the roller coaster, I'd say sit up front. I believe that the airtime hills hit stronger up front versus the back. which is contrary to what you would usually think. So many people go to sit in the back because the airtime is going to be better. For whatever reason, Abyssus is the opposite. But I digress. You then dive underneath the station, you enter that batwing, that signature moment right when you're walking up. That's broken up into first half dive loop, second half Immelman. You pass back over up to the original side that you were on. And this is where Abyssus stays low to the ground and really just tossing you all around. So many of these moments just blend together. And there's a lot more of it than I expected. Abyssus is a nice long ride. Like you're banking to the right, you go into a twist to the left, a really good airtime pop right here. That's a nice fun moment. You're banking to the right. You enter your final inversion, diving again into one of those trenches, kind of doing this almost wall stall briefly to the right. You twist back to the left, twist again to the right, and then airtime hill into the brake run. I really think some of those last few elements aren't expected. Having not watched a POV before getting on this, I assumed that the ride was going to be over earlier than it actually was. So it's great that Energylandia went with a full package experience for something like this. But for whatever reason, Abyssus just overall didn't wow me like I hoped. Honestly, Formula in the same park I think wowed me more than this one did. And I'm not sure why. Maybe Formula is a bit punchier? Because by all means, Abyssus should be the more impressive roller coaster. Perhaps it's because Abyssus wasn't quite as whippy as I was hoping. It felt like this one was almost a bit dialed back more from some of their other models. But I say all this coming from the perspective of someone who likes getting pushed to the limits. When you have rides like Hyperion and Zadra in the same park that do that, I think it is totally understandable why this one does not. I think this one is more in line with what a family could look for in a thrill ride and not feel like it was too much. They're still satisfied with all the moments. It's absolutely still a big kid thrill ride, you know? But it's not like Zadra that tries to like rip your face off. So as much as it is kind of fun to think about this ride if some of those transitions were a bit whippier, or maybe some of those airtime moments were more in line with like ejector airtime instead of floater. Yeah, I think it would make the ride better, but that doesn't necessarily mean it would be a better ride for this park. So for Abyssus's final score, I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10. I liked a lot about this ride. I think it did a lot of things well, but in more ways than one, it did leave me wanting a bit more. I think with just a few simple changes, even just from the park side of things with presentation, I think it would be a stronger attraction. But in its current form, it's one that I'm always happy to ride. I'll do it multiple times even, but it's not necessarily one that I'm going to walk away from my day at Energylandia saying, that was something special, like I did with something like Let Coaster or even Phoenix. But hey, you know, if some of the critiques that I brought up aren't things that are that important to you in a ride experience, and you don't think you'd be bothered by it, you'd probably really enjoy this attraction. Because at the end of the day, it's a nice, smooth, long ride that does a lot of things really well. So let me know down in the comments below if you agree with the points that I've brought up about Abyssus at Energylandia, and stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios. We'll see you next time.